Shalom, shalom, it's following Yahshua. Welcome again to the Rock. Continuing on the series, this is part 2 of I Can't Leave the Cities. One of the topics I hear people say oftentimes is I can't afford to leave the cities. And I understand that. I can sympathize for that because that was something that I believed, that I extremely thought, is that I can't afford to leave the cities. And I learned something. I learned some very powerful lessons in making the move out here. Is a lot of people can't actually afford to stay in the cities. They just don't know it yet. With inflation, get this cat out of here, please. With inflation going the way it is, with the job markets, with all the things that are taking place in these cities, gas prices are going out the roof. People are starting to realize you may not be able to afford to actually stay in the city. Thank you. People don't understand that. You may not actually be able to afford to stay in these cities. A lot of people are being priced out of the cities as we speak. They're having to make tough decisions. Do I pay my rent or do I pay my cell phone bill? Do I pay my cell phone bill or do I buy food? Do I buy food or do I keep the lights on? Do I keep the lights on or do I pay my credit card bills? Do I pay my credit card bills or do I pay keep the water on? Do I keep the water on or do I keep gas in my car? And the cycle continues. And they're not understanding that the price of land out here is going up too. The price of food is going up out here. The price of building supplies are going up out here. The price of everything is going up everywhere. But you do realize that even when you live in these cities and you pay $800, $600, $700, $800 a month, you literally could have gotten yourself a piece of land a couple years ago. I'm not sure what it is now, but you could have gotten yourself a piece of land a couple years ago, a couple acres, 5, 10, 3, 1, and paid, $200-$300 a month for your land. And at this point of time, gotten yourself a travel trailer, put that travel trailer on that piece of property, and determined from there what you needed to make it, what you needed to survive. Can I afford solar? Can I afford this? Can I afford that? See, a lot of people today, they're paying their money monthly and getting nothing in return. Nothing in return. You're getting the right to survive another month. They'll keep your lights on for another month. They'll keep your water on for another month. And a lot of people are depending on these rent moratoriums and these holds on rent, which is going to put stress and strain on the property owners. Now the property owners have stress and strain on them because they're not getting rent. So this whole cycle is going around, and it's going to cause more and more and more problems and strain on the reservation. Now, people out here still live, well, maybe not in this area, but there's a lot of people who live in, I'll say the Ozark region, even the Appalachia region, that live and still receive food stamps. They still get food stamps. The same way people do in the city. They still get help from the system. Because I know a lot of people are afraid if they leave the cities, where they don't get food stamps out here. You'd be surprised to find out how many people are actually living on food stamps or get their food paid on food stamps out here. I know a man who moved out here. He moved away, but he moved out into the general Ozark region, and he eventually ended up buying his own property. But when he first came out here with his wife and child, they moved in with a friend, and he couldn't even. The friend basically said, "I can't afford to feed you, so your responsibility is to feed yourself, but you can live on the property and help do property work as part of your, I guess rent, you would call it." So the guy worked on his friend's property, and he used to hunt squirrels. Now, this guy's not a Torah keeper, doesn't keep the law of Yah, and he ate unclean. So he was eating squirrels, and he would go out and hunt squirrels. And then he got to a point where he bought a couple chickens, and then he started reproducing and hatching his own chickens, and then he bought some rabbits, and he would reproduce his own rabbits, and he had meat. And then he had a little garden, and his friend gave him a little section of his property, the garden, and he had a little garden going over there. And the man was able to eat and feed his family. And then after a couple months, he was able to get food stamps, and he didn't stop producing food. He never stopped what he calls food, not what the Bible calls food. What he called food, the rabbits and the squirrels, he didn't stop reproducing those. And even if you do keep the law of Yah, you can hatch chickens. There's a way for you to still have food out here. Try that in the city. Try having a hard time in the city and saying, hey, I'll just buy a couple chickens. I'll buy, 10, 15 chickens, eat the eggs, hatch my own, kill certain chickens, or the roosters, eat the meat. Try that. See what happens. See what happens. Let me tell you what's going to happen. You may be in some sort of serious trouble. First of all, you're not going to be able to do that in your apartment. You're not going to be able to have, a small flock of chickens in your apartment. You may be able to have rabbits. You may be able to get away with a couple of rabbits. But you're not going to be able to garden. So as the prices are going up and you say, I can't afford to move, you do realize that you're probably, as time goes on, not going to be able to afford to stay in those cities, in those reservations. The same thing with gardening. You're not going to be able to garden. If you live in an apartment, I don't see you doing much gardening to the point where you're going to be able to eat off of what you grow. So people are always concerned about the cost of things. I can't afford this. Even, for instance, a minimum wage job. Most people don't know, but a minimum wage job, which is what most people who are working in the cities have, a minimum wage job or $1 or $2 above minimum wage. You do know that most of those minimum wage jobs, for a minimum wage job, it'll get you a lot further out here than it does in the city. Sure, you may have to travel 20 minutes to work, 30 minutes to work. But some of you do that and you only travel 5 miles and it still takes you 30 minutes to get to work. Out here, you may have to travel 15, 20 miles to get to your nearest, whatever, the people work today in the cities, Sonics or AutoZone job or Walmart, Home Depot. They have a lot of lumber mills out here. And there's a lot of, work where, you kind of call it seasonal, where let's say a man who grows hay, is cutting hay, may need balers. He may need somebody to move bales. There's always a lot of handyman work out here. Somebody's building a barn and just needs a laborer, and they'll pay you. But people say, hey, I have to make $18 an hour in the city. Well, you do understand as they raise the minimum wage in these cities, everything else is going to raise with them. The price of rent's going to raise. And if they raise the minimum wage, let's say in Missouri, you do realize that the minimum wage raised for all of Missouri, not just the cities, right? It didn't just raise in St. Louis or Kansas City. It raised in the whole state of Missouri. Just saying. So if you're in the Ozarks, you're still going to receive the same minimum wage that they did in the city. And most of the jobs out in these areas are, minimum wage or $1 over as far as per hour. Unless you go into business for yourself or something like that, you're probably going to be making around minimum wage. But you do realize the minimum wage goes a lot further for you out here than it does in the city, right? Think of what most people who live on minimum wage in these cities often are also reliant upon government services. That's not the same out here. There are people out here that literally live on $500-600 a month. That covers their land payment, that covers whatever expenses that they may have, and the rest, that covers their cell phone so they can communicate with other people, maybe even the internet. Please tell me in one of these reservations where you're going to pay $500 or $600 a month. Tell me where you're going to pay literally under $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month, and be able to make it without having the government step in and subsidize your electricity or subsidize your water or subsidize your food or subsidize your electricity or subsidize even your housing. So you can't just, you have to think about this thing in its in the whole. You can't just say, I can't afford to live out there until you actually run through the numbers. I can't afford to leave because many of you are not going to be able to afford to stay in these metropolitan areas. Many are already being priced out. That's why the the homelessness is booming in a lot of these metropolitan areas, a lot of these cities. It's booming because you can't afford to live there. If you're living on credit cards, you're living on debt, you can't afford to live there. And it's only a matter of time. So look at look at that yourself and see how that plays in your lifestyle. See how that plays in how you're doing things and how you're looking at the totality of this situation that we have in this country that is growing, which is debt, homelessness, poverty, and more people are willing to trade in their freedoms if it means that the system will take care of them. And believe me, they're going to take care of you all the way. But if you're a person that, doesn't want that sort of overreach, because they're going to overreach, they've already done it in the cities. If you don't want that sort of overreach, you're going to have to make moves. And it's becoming harder and harder to make moves because more and more people have seen the plight of the cities and have moved. When I travel, and if I travel an hour away, there are a lot of areas that I see that weren't, somebody may have owned the land, but nothing was on it. And I'm talking about since I've been here in the Ozark region. That land was always just sitting there. Now there's travel trailer homes being put on it. There's mobile homes being put on it. People are pulling. One person put a school bus on his. They're buying rinky-dink uh, 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 trailers and bringing them onto their land. People are buying shed homes. People are building little cabins, literally tiny. It seems like maybe little 12-foot by 12-foot cabins, throwing it up there, and that's where they're starting from because people have realized I can't survive in these metropolitan areas. Or they see the writing on the wall and saying, I'm going to get priced out to the point where I can't make it there. It's getting so expensive in these areas that I know what the prudent man foresees the evil and hides himself. So a lot of these people are looking and saying, I know where this ends up. I know how this is going to go. I know where we're going to be in a year or 2 or 3 or 5. And I don't want to be in this position 2 years from now, a year from now, 6 months from now. I don't want to be in this position being destitute, having to pitch a tent on a sidewalk or next to a public park or on the grassy area, in between the freeway on ramp and the freeway, or in storm drains. Or I don't want to be that person. I would rather just have a mean cottage, have food, have water, have electricity, have a place to lay my head, a place to keep cool from the heat and to keep warm from the cold, a place to raise my family. And you know what? As I learn more and more skills out here, I can do more and more things without having to go in. You'd be surprised at how many lumber yards are out here and how they will sell wood that may be just a tad bit warped, 75% off, 80% off. They'll sell, when they cut a tree down, the bark ends, the edges of the bark, they'll sell that to you. And you can use that to build some projects, to handle some projects. You'll open up your mind and you'll think. And one of the things out here is you'll start looking at it and saying, man, do I really need all that stuff? If I'm living a simple life, do I really need a TV in each room? If it comes down to not being able to feed my family or having that extra TV, is it worth having that extra TV? Is it worth buying that PS6? Dropping, $1,000 for a video game system and then you try to resell it and you can't. Or you try to resell that TV because you had to have a 60-inch TV. It cost you several $100s, but when you sell it now, you get $100 back. That's it. You start really going through and saying, what do I need and what do I don't need? What skills do I need to have and what skills do I don't need to have? And you may even find out that you have an extreme deficiency in skills. Just think about it. This is part 2. I will have a part 3 tomorrow. Also, tomorrow, the sisters will probably have a live stream tomorrow. We'll see. 95%, yes, we'll have a live stream tomorrow. Anyways, I hope this video is a blessing. Don't look at it and say, well, I can't afford it. I thought that. I thought I couldn't afford it. Until I did it. Until I did it. And sometimes that negative thinking that you have is actually what's stopping you from getting what you need to get accomplished. If Yah is sending you that way, then your idea shouldn't be questioning Yah. It should be knowing that he sent you and just simply obeying. That's part of coming out of her, Yah's people. Bless y'all. I apologize for a long video. Shalom.